My husband's 81-year-old grandmother whispered. They've been drugging me for 7 months, and I have proof. She said it from a bed that smelled like urine and sweat and 40 hours of being left alone. Her lips were cracked. Her pulse was 48. Her fingers were cold as copper pipes. And her eyes, those sharp gray eyes everyone in the family had been telling me for 2 years were mostly gone now, were locked on mine with the precision of a prosecutor. I had been married to her grandson Connor for 6 years. I had believed every word his mother Diane ever told me about this woman being faded, confused, not really here anymore. And I had just come home from a 4-day business trip to find a handwritten note on my kitchen counter that said, in my husband's sloppy scrawl, "Mom and I needed a break. We'll be back Monday. Deal with the senile old woman, your husband." Senile, the woman currently reciting the brand names of her medications to me in alphabetical order from memory. Senile, I didn't panic. I locked the door. I put the note in a Ziploc bag. And in the 11 minutes it took for me to stabilize the woman my husband had left to die, I made a list of 7 people who were about to find out exactly what happens when you underestimate the quiet daughter-in-law. My name is Rachel Ashford. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how a grocery store receipt, a Ziploc bag, and an 81-year-old retired estate attorney turned my in-laws into defendants before Monday morning. I live in a 2-story colonial on Thornwood Drive in Rosewood, a quiet suburb of Minneapolis. The house is beige with black shutters and a front porch swing I bought for Connor's grandmother Evelyn Ashford in 2021, when she first moved in with us after her minor stroke. She used to sit on that swing every afternoon with a book of crossword puzzles and a thermos of weak coffee, the only kind she could still drink after her stroke. She'd wave at the mailman. She'd compliment the neighbor's dog. She'd tell me every single day, "Rachel, sweetheart, the marigolds in the front bed need deadheading again." It became our running joke. The marigolds always needed deadheading. Evelyn was a retired estate attorney. She had practiced in St. Paul for 41 years until she retired at 73. She drafted trusts and wills for half of Ramsey County's quiet money. She was the kind of lawyer who kept her own copies of everything, in triplicate, color-coded, in a locked fireproof cabinet in her home office. When she moved in with us, that cabinet came with her. It sat in the corner of her bedroom under a crocheted blanket her own mother had made in 1961. I was the only person in that family who ever asked Evelyn about her work. Diane, my mother-in-law, rolled her eyes every time Evelyn mentioned the law. Connor would pat his grandmother's hand and say, "Grandma, let's talk about something fun." Only I would sit across from her at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and ask, "Evelyn, what was the most unusual estate you ever handled?" And Evelyn would light up, and tell me a story from 1987 about a widow who'd hidden a Rolex in a jar of pickled beets. Those stories ended 14 months ago, around the time Diane moved in to help. If you've ever trusted someone with something that mattered, stay with me. I married Connor Ashford on June 22, 2019. He was a territory manager for a medical supply company, Thornton Medical. Tall, broad-shouldered, a salesman's smile, and the kind of charm that worked on women in airports and hotel bars better than it worked at home. I didn't know that when I married him. I know it now. Connor made $98,000 a year plus bonuses. I was, and still am, a senior accountant at a firm called Bellwright Harris. I clear $142,000 a year plus quarterly distributions. That gap never sat well with Connor. He joked about it at dinner parties. He made remarks about it on our anniversary. He always framed my career as something that was hard on the marriage, as if my making more money than him was a personal defect I should apologize for. His mother, Diane Ashford, was 62, widowed since 2015. A retired dental hygienist from Duluth who had moved into our guest bedroom in February 2025 for a few weeks to help with Evelyn, and then quietly, methodically, never left. Diane had strong opinions about everything. She had strong opinions about how I loaded the dishwasher. She had strong opinions about my working too much. She had very strong opinions about Evelyn, her own mother-in-law, the woman who had been kind to her for 40 years. whom Diane now described in my kitchen in the kind of low, dismissive tones that women use when they want to pretend they're being gentle. Mom Ashford slipping, Rachel. Mom Ashford had an accident again. Mom Ashford doesn't really know what's going on anymore. I heard those phrases 3 times a week. I believed them. I was busy. I was traveling for work. I was not a medical professional. And Diane was the woman who had moved in to help. That is going to be the hardest sentence for me to live with for the rest of my life. I believed them. The signs were there. I just wasn't home enough to read them. March 2025. I came home from a 3-day trip to Chicago. Evelyn was asleep in her chair at 4 p.m. Diane said, "She's been napping a lot, Rachel. The stroke meds, you know." April 2025. Evelyn couldn't remember my birthday. She had remembered it every year for 6 years. She had written it on her kitchen calendar in 2020 in red pen. Now she looked at me and said, "Is it your birthday, sweetheart, already?" Diane, standing behind her, made a sad face and mouthed, "It's getting worse." June 2025. Evelyn stopped doing her crossword puzzles. She'd done the Sunday New York Times puzzle in ink for 60 years. Her hands just stopped picking up the pen. August 2025. Evelyn fell in the hallway. She needed stitches above her eye. Diane drove her to the ER. I was in Denver for a conference. When I got home, Diane had moved Evelyn's medications into a locked cabinet for safety. She'd also moved Evelyn's bedroom down the hall, further from the bathroom, to make it easier for us to check on her. October 2025. I came home from a 5-day trip and realized I hadn't actually had a real conversation with Evelyn in 3 months. Every time I tried, Diane was there, finishing her sentences, explaining what Evelyn meant, gently contradicting her, smoothly steering the conversation. Every time I tried to take Evelyn out for coffee alone, she was too tired. Every time I suggested a family dinner with just me and Evelyn, Mom Ashford needs consistency. January 2026. Evelyn's 81st birthday. I baked her favorite lemon pound cake with raspberry glaze. She took 2 bites. She looked at me with glassy, distant eyes. She said, "It's very nice, dear." Then she asked Diane if she could go lie down. As Diane walked her out, Evelyn glanced back over her shoulder at me, one sharp, clear look, like a woman trying to signal across a crowded room. I smiled and waved back. I thought she was just tired. I thought she was just tired. I will be paying that thought back for the rest of my life. Thursday, April 9th, 2026. I flew out to Atlanta for a 4-day audit engagement with a healthcare client. Return flight, Monday, April 13th at 6:45 p.m. Connor drove me to the airport. On the way, he asked, too casually, too smoothly, "Ratch, how bad would it be if Mom and I took a little long weekend? Drive up to the North Shore, just me and her. She's been stressed with Grandma." I said, "What about Evelyn?" "A home health aide can cover. Or we just stay in town in case. It's just a thought." I said, "Let me think about it while I'm gone." I didn't think about it. The audit was intense. I barely slept. I ate dinner at my laptop 3 nights running. I called home twice, once Friday, once Saturday, and Diane picked up both times, voice bright as a bell, saying, "Everything's wonderful here, Rachel. Grandma had oatmeal this morning. We're watching Turner Classic Movies. Don't worry about a thing." Saturday night, the audit wrapped earlier than expected. By Sunday morning, I was on a 10:47 a.m. flight home. I landed in Minneapolis at 12:31 p.m. I was pulling onto Thornwood Drive by 1:58 p.m. The driveway was empty. No Connor's Silverado. No Diane's Lexus. No sign of any home health aide. The house was dead quiet. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, set down my suitcase, and I smelled it immediately, not strong, not overpowering, but unmistakable to anyone who has ever cared for an elderly relative, the faint ammonia smell of a person who has not been bathed or changed in too long. It drifted from the back hallway, from Evelyn's bedroom. My stomach dropped. I walked to the kitchen first because some part of me still wanted to believe that there would be a note explaining. An aide schedule. A neighbor checking in. Something. There was a note. Written on the back of a grocery store receipt from Lund's, torn in half. In Connor's handwriting. Ratch, Mom and I needed a break. We'll be back Monday. Deal with the senile old woman. Your husband. Below that in Diane's sharp, tight cursive and addendum. Meds are in the kitchen drawer, just keep her comfortable. D. Keep her comfortable, like a pet. I stood in my own kitchen holding a torn grocery receipt and I felt something in my chest go very still. Not broken. Still. The way a surgeon's hands go still before the first cut. I walked to Evelyn's bedroom, door closed. I knocked. No answer. I opened it. She was on the bed. On top of the covers. Still in the cotton nightgown I'd seen her in Wednesday evening before I left. Her hair was matted on one side. Her lips were white and cracked. Her left hand was clenched on the sheet like she'd been gripping it for a while. Her breathing was shallow but steady, about 12 breaths a minute. I crossed the room in 3 steps. I put 2 fingers against her carotid. Pulse was there, 48, slow but regular. Her skin was cold and dry, classic dehydration. Her nightgown was soiled. The room had not been ventilated in, I'd guess, 48 to 60 hours. I said, very softly, "Evelyn, it's Rachel, I'm home." Her eyes opened, and everyone in my family, every single person who had told me for the last 14 months that this woman was gone was wrong. Her eyes were sharp. Tired, sunken, dehydrated, angry, but sharp. She looked at me the way she used to look at me across the kitchen table when I asked her about a 1987 estate case. Focused, alive, Rachel. "Evelyn, I'm going to get you water. I'm going to check your blood sugar. I'm going to call an ambulance." Her hand, the clenched one, moved. Slowly, with effort, she reached for my wrist. Her grip was weak, but it was deliberate. She pulled me down toward her face. "Honey, don't take me to the hospital yet. Come closer. They've been drugging me for 7 months. And I have proof." I froze. "Evelyn." "Rachel, listen. My head is clearer than it's been in a year. They stopped the dosing Friday morning when they left because there was no one here to give it to me. I haven't had whatever they were giving me in 50 hours. I can think again. I know what I'm saying. Listen." She told me everything in 4 minutes. Short sentences. Precise. The way a woman who has drafted 600 estate documents tells a story when her life depends on being believed. Diane had been crushing pills into Evelyn's morning water since September 2025. Some days it was Ambien, some days it was Benadryl, some days it was Evelyn's own clonazepam double-dosed. The pills made her sleep. The pills made her confused. The pills made her lose time. She wasn't losing her mind. They were drugging her. Connor knew. Connor knew by December. Evelyn knew that Connor knew because she'd overheard a conversation between Diane and Connor in the upstairs hallway on December 19th at roughly 10:40 p.m. A conversation where Diane said the phrase, "Another few months, and we can petition for conservatorship." Asterisk and Connor said asterisk, "Fine, but Rachel can't know." Evelyn had been collecting evidence since January. "What kind of evidence?" I said. "Go to my closet," she said. "Behind the winter coats, there's a shoebox. Bring it to me." I brought her water first. Small sips, a tablespoon at a time, the way I'd learned when my own mother had been sick in 2018. I propped her up on a second pillow. I took her pulse again at 2:23 p.m., 52, trending up. I brought her a small piece of dry toast. She ate 3 bites. Then I went to the closet. Behind the winter coats, a heavy blue peacoat from 1994, a down jacket, 2 raincoats was a brown shoebox. Florsheim, men's size 10, her late husband's. I brought it to her bed. She lifted the lid with hands that were trembling but controlled. Inside was not a treasure. Inside was the quiet, methodical record of an 81-year-old retired estate attorney building a case against her own family. Item 1, 32 grocery store receipts. Lund's, Cub Foods, Walgreens, all from September 2025 through March 2026. Every receipt had purchases circled in red pen. Over-the-counter Benadryl. Tylenol PM. Unisum. Receipts showing the pattern. Diane was buying children's strength Benadryl, easier to crush, less bitter, every 9 to 12 days. Item 2, a small composition notebook. Evelyn's handwriting, dated entries from January 4, 2026 onward. Each entry had a time, a description of symptoms, and an assessment. January 4, 7:15 a.m., Diane brought morning water. Felt dizzy within 20 minutes. Slept until 2 p.m. Woke groggy, couldn't remember morning. Every entry like that, a daily log, for 97 days. Item 3, 3 plastic bags, each containing a small white tablet fragment. Labels in Evelyn's shaky handwriting. Found in water glass, bottom, Feb 14. Partial tablet, morning coffee, Feb 22. White residue, water bottle, Mar 3. She'd been saving physical evidence. Item 4, a letter addressed to Attorney Harold Brandt, Brandt and Sorensen, St. Paul, sealed. Stamped, never mailed. Evelyn had written it in February when her cognition was cleaner. It was a request to Brandt, her own longtime attorney, to conduct a wellness check and retain him on an emergency basis should Evelyn become unable to communicate independently. She hadn't been able to mail it because Diane had been bringing her mail to her, already opened, from the mailbox. Item 5, the key to her fireproof cabinet. Item 6, a single sheet of paper. Her current durable power of attorney, dated 2019, naming her attorney Harold Brandt, not Connor, not Diane, as her agent, with a backup agent, Rachel Renee Ashford, me. Evelyn had made me her backup medical power of attorney in 2019 and never told me. I had been the person with legal standing to make medical decisions for her for nearly 7 years, and I had not known it. Because the woman who had drafted it was 81 years old, careful, private, and had always believed that you don't tell people they have power until they need to use it. She looked up at me from her bed. "Now you know," she said. "What would you like to do first?" I called Harold Brandt first. Saved in Evelyn's flip phone contacts under Hal, he answered on the third ring. "Hal Brandt." "Mr. Brandt, my name is Rachel Ashford. I'm Evelyn Ashford's granddaughter-in-law and her backup medical power of attorney. She's with me. She's stable. She has information I think you need to hear immediately." A pause, then, in a voice that told me Hal Brandt had been a trial attorney for 50 years, "Put her on." Evelyn and Hal spoke for 14 minutes. I sat beside her. She gave him times, dates, items. She read from her composition notebook. She told him about the sealed letter she'd written in February. Hal interrupted her only twice, once to ask her to repeat a date, once to ask if she was able to swallow water on her own. She said yes to both. At the end of the call, Hal said, "Evelyn, I am bringing my paralegal and a Ramsey County Sheriff's deputy to your residence at 4:30 p.m. today. I am contacting Dr. Vivian Okonkwo at Abbott Northwestern's geriatric unit for immediate medical consultation and tox screening. You are not leaving that house without medical supervision." "Rachel, are you with me?" "I'm with you. Do not let Connor or Diane back in the house. Do not answer their texts. Do not answer their calls. If they arrive, do not open the door. Is that clear?" "Yes." I hung up. Evelyn lay back on her pillow, her eyes closed for a long moment. When she opened them again, they were wet. "Rachel." "Yes, Evelyn." I was so afraid I was imagining it. I was so afraid I was the senile old woman. I held her hand. Hers was cold. Mine was warm. I said, "Evelyn, you are the sharpest woman I have ever known. You have been my favorite person in this family for 6 years. And I am so sorry I did not see what they were doing to you." She squeezed my hand. Twice. I squeezed back. Twice. She said, "You saw it today. That's what matters." If you've ever watched someone be dismissed when they were telling the truths, comment below. I read everyone. Dr. Vivian Okonkwo arrived at 3:42 p.m. with a nurse and a mobile lab kit. Hal Brandt arrived at 4:17 p.m. with his paralegal, Miriam Olusegun, and Deputy Caleb Ferreira of the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Ferreira had been briefed by Hal during the drive. He carried a body camera. He turned it on when he entered the front door. Dr. Okonkwo drew blood from Evelyn's left arm at 4:31 p.m. Urine sample at 4:39. A rapid in-home serum panel at 4:44 p.m. showed elevated diphenhydramine metabolites consistent with chronic administration over a period of at least 4 months, plus trace zolpidem metabolites consistent with more recent dosing. Dr. Okonkwo noted after a 20-minute assessment that Evelyn's cognition was remarkably intact for a woman in her current physical condition. consistent with recent cessation of sedative administration and medication-induced pseudodementia presentation. Medication-induced pseudodementia. That's the clinical term. What Diane had been doing to Evelyn had a name. It had a diagnostic code. It had, and this is the part Hal Brandt emphasized as he wrote it down, Minnesota Statute 609.232(5), criminal abuse of a vulnerable adult. A felony, up to 20 years. Hal's paralegal Miriam began photographing every item in the shoebox, every receipt, every page of the composition notebook, every plastic bag of tablet fragments. Deputy Ferreira recorded everything on his body cam. By 6 p.m., Evelyn was sitting up in bed eating soft scrambled eggs and drinking apple juice through a straw. Dr. Okonkwo had cleared her to stay in the house overnight under my care, with a home nurse arriving at 8 p.m. and an intake appointment at Abbott Northwestern the next morning. Hal had drafted, printed, and executed an emergency modification to Evelyn's durable power of attorney, transferring immediate authority from her dormant 2019 designation to active. Me and Hal joint, effective immediately. At 6:47 p.m. my phone rang. Connor. Hal looked at me and said, "Put it on speaker. Do not engage. Record." I put it on speaker. I hit record. "Ratch, hey, listen. Mom and I are gonna be back later tonight, maybe 10. How's Grandma?" I said, "Fine, she's asleep." Cool. "Listen, don't bother with her medication schedule tonight. Mom'll handle it when we're back." "Okay." "You good, babe? You sound weird." "I'm tired, drive safe." "Love you." Memo. I hung up. Hal looked at Deputy Ferreira. Deputy Ferreira looked at Hal. Neither of them said the thing they were both thinking, but I said it for them. He didn't ask if she was alive. "No," Hal said, "he didn't." Connor and Diane pulled into the driveway at 10:14 p.m. The house was quiet. The lights were low. Evelyn was in her bedroom with the home health nurse, the door closed. I was in the living room. Hal Brandt was sitting in the armchair by the fireplace reading a 3-ring binder of documents. Deputy Ferreira was in the dining room, out of sight of the front door. His dash cam was running on his vehicle in the driveway, pointed at the front porch. Connor came in first, then Diane. Connor was laughing at something on his phone. Diane was carrying a bag from a winery. "Ratch," Connor called, "we're back." He walked into the living room. He saw Hal Brandt in the armchair. He stopped. Diane walked in behind him. She saw Hal. She saw the lights low. She saw my face. Her smile started to fade the way a color photograph fades in the sun, slowly from the edges. "Rachel," she said carefully, "who is this?" Hal stood up. He was 74 years old, 6 feet tall, wearing a navy suit and a tie from 1998. He looked like a man who had walked out of a black and white photograph of St. Paul's legal community and had come back to deliver judgment. "Mrs. Ashford, Mr. Ashford, my name is Harold Brandt. I am Evelyn Ashford's attorney. I have been her attorney since 1994. I'm going to ask you both to stay exactly where you are while I explain your current legal situation." Connor laughed a nervous, wrong laugh. "Ratch, what the hell?" "Connor, sit down." "Ratch." "Connor, sit down." He sat. Diane did not. Diane took one step back toward the front door. Deputy Ferreira walked out of the dining room at that moment. Uniformed, body cam on. "Come, ma'am, please sit down." Diane sat. Hal walked to the coffee table. He opened his 3-ring binder. He began. At 2:47 p.m. today, Rachel Ashford returned home from a business trip and discovered Evelyn Ashford in a state of medical neglect. She immediately contacted me. At 3:42 p.m., Dr. Vivian Okonkwo arrived at this residence with a mobile laboratory. Dr. Okonkwo drew blood and obtained urine samples from Evelyn. Those samples have been processed. Evelyn Ashford's serum showed elevated diphenhydramine metabolites consistent with chronic administration, plus zolpidem metabolites consistent with recent administration. She had not been prescribed either medication. Diphenhydramine in her morning water was being crushed from over-the-counter children's Benadryl tablets. Zolpidem was being crushed from a prescription issued to one Diane Michelle Ashford, date of birth July 11, 1963. Prescribed at the Park Nicollet Clinic in Bloomington on February 12, 2026. Diane's face went white, Connor's face went whiter. Additionally, Hal continued, Evelyn Ashford has maintained a contemporaneous log of 97 days of documented drug administration and corresponding cognitive effects. She has preserved physical evidence, tablet fragments, residues in sealed, dated, handwritten evidence bags. She has receipts dating to September 2025 documenting pharmacy purchases of Children's Strength Benadryl by Diane Ashford, paid on Diane Ashford's personal credit card ending in 4471. Connor said, Grandma's confused. Hal did not raise his voice, he simply spoke, Mr. Ashford. Your grandmother has been clear, lucid, and coherent for the last 9 hours. She has been examined by a geriatric specialist who has issued a written statement that her presenting cognitive deficits were consistent with medication-induced pseudodementia and are currently resolving. Furthermore, Evelyn Ashford recorded a conversation in this hallway on December 19, 2025, at approximately 10:40 p.m. on the flip phone your mother gave her and told her was for emergencies only. The recording captures your mother using the phrase *another few months, and we can petition for conservatorship. It captures your response *fine, but Rachel can't know. The living room went perfectly still. Diane made a sound, a small, choked sound, like air escaping a closing door. Connor put his head in his hands. Deputy Ferreira, Hal said, would you continue? Deputy Ferreira read Connor and Diane their rights in my living room at 10:41 p.m. They were arrested, not detained. This was felony criminal abuse of a vulnerable adult, and Hal Brandt had spent the previous 5 hours coordinating with the Ramsey County DA's office to ensure the arrest happened clean, at the residence, with evidence preserved in situ. Diane cried. Connor did not. Connor kept saying, this is a misunderstanding. This is my grandmother. I love my grandmother. Hal said, and I will remember this for the rest of my life. Mr. Ashford. When your wife called you at 6:47 p.m. tonight and told you your grandmother was asleep, your exact response was, don't bother with her medication tonight, Mom will handle it when we're back. You did not ask if she was alive. You did not ask if she was eating. You did not ask if she was safe. You asked us not to give her water without Diane present. That audio recording is in my possession. I suggest you stop talking. Connor stopped talking. They were booked at the Ramsey County Adult Detention Facility on Dorothy Day Place at 11:38 p.m. Charged Monday morning, both with criminal abuse of a vulnerable adult under MN 609.2325, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult under MN 609.2335, and conspiracy. Bail was set at $150,000 cash each. Neither of them made bail for 4 days. The dominoes fell in order over the next 8 weeks. Monday morning, Hal filed for immediate divorce on my behalf. Grounds, irretrievable breakdown with criminal charges pending against spouse as aggravating factor. Emergency protective order granted. Connor barred from the house, from contact with me, and from contact with Evelyn. The judge attached language describing Connor's conduct as so extraordinarily callous as to shock the conscience of this court. Tuesday, Connor was terminated from Thornton Medical. Diane's dental hygienist license was placed on emergency suspension by the Minnesota Board of Dentistry pending the outcome of the criminal case. Wednesday, Evelyn's full estate documents were reviewed and restructured. The Evelyn Ashford Revocable Trust, which she had set up in 2001 and updated in 2019, named me, not Connor, as successor trustee. Assets: $1.9 million, including the Thornwood Drive house, 2 rental properties in St. Paul, and a conservative investment portfolio. Connor had never owned the house we lived in. The trust had. Evelyn had always owned everything she sat on. Thursday, Connor, through his new attorney, asked for a conversation. I said no. Friday, Diane's sister Marjorie flew in from Duluth and sat in my kitchen crying, asking me to drop the charges. She's my sister. She made a mistake. I told Marjorie, kindly, clearly, that Evelyn was 81, had nearly died, and that I was not the person with the authority to drop felony charges. The DA was. I gave her Hal's business card and asked her to leave my house. 6 weeks later, Connor and Diane both pled out. Diane, 6 years state prison, 10 years supervised release, lifetime prohibition from working with vulnerable adults, full restitution. Connor, 4 years prison, 8 years supervised release, full restitution, and a protective order running concurrent with Evelyn's lifetime. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later. No alimony requested. I kept my 2018 Honda, my retirement accounts, my career. I kept the only thing I had ever actually cared about in that marriage, which was my own sense of who I was before Connor taught me to second-guess it. And Evelyn moved into the master bedroom. Evelyn is 82 years old now. She lives in the master bedroom of the house on Thornwood Drive, the house her trust has always owned, the house I now live in with her as co-occupant and, per the amended documents, co-trustee. She is fully recovered. Dr. Okonkwo cleared her at 6 weeks. Her cognition is back to baseline, which is the baseline of a woman who drafted estate documents for Ramsey County's quiet money for 41 years. Her pulse is 68. She walks with a cane, slowly, around the block every morning at 8:15 a.m., rain or shine, weather or snow. Neighbors wave. She waves back. She does the Sunday New York Times crossword in ink every week. I buy her a new Pilot G 2.0 7-pen every 3 months because she goes through them. The marigolds are blooming in the front bed. She deadheads them herself now, sitting on a stool I bought her at Bachman's nursery last month. She is careful about her back. She is less careful about the morning chill. Some things you cannot change in an 82-year-old woman who was born in a farmhouse in northern Wisconsin in 1944. Last week, a Sunday, I came home from work to find her sitting on the front porch swing. The swing I bought her in 2021. She was drinking her weak coffee from a thermos and she had her crossword on her lap and she was just there. The way she used to be, the way I thought she'd never be again. I sat down next to her. She didn't look at me. She was looking out at the marigolds. Evelyn. Yes, Rachel. I owe you an apology. I'm going to owe you for the rest of my life. She was quiet for a while. Sparrows in the maple tree. A lawn mower 2 doors down. The marigolds. She said, Rachel, I was a lawyer for 41 years. I watched hundreds of families do this to their elders. I watched adult children isolate their parents. I watched them control medications. I watched them pretend to be caretakers while they were actually thieves. And I watched good daughters-in-law and good sons-in-law, people who were not of the blood, miss it, every single time. Because the blood relatives speak their language, and the in-laws are always a little uncertain about their place. She looked at me then. You were not supposed to see it, Rachel. They designed the whole system so you would not see it. When they said I was slipping, you believed them because they were my son and my granddaughter and my blood, and you were the outsider with no permission to contradict them. That was their power. It was not your fault. It was the architecture of what they built. I cried, she patted my hand, twice. I squeezed back, twice, she said, but you came home early, Rachel. You came home early and you opened my bedroom door and you believed me the first time. Most daughters-in-law don't. Most daughters-in-law stand in that doorway and they smile at the blood relatives and they walk away. You didn't. You sat down next to an old woman and you listened. Evelyn. That is the rarest thing a woman can do for another woman, Rachel. To hear her the first time she whispers. Your own grandmother, my friend Ruthann, gone 11 years now, used to say, half the crimes against old women would stop tomorrow if one person under 50 believed us the first time. I sat on that porch swing for a long time. She finished her crossword. I watched her. She didn't need my help. She didn't need my supervision. She needed, the way old women need, to be seen. To be treated like a person with a present tense, not a patient with a past. Some women are not senile. Some women are not fading. Some women are not almost gone. Some women are being quietly poisoned by people who have something to gain when the poison works. The only question anyone has ever had to ask, the only question, is whether somebody who loves them will be in the house when they whisper the truth out loud. Evelyn had 97 days of observations in a composition notebook. She had 32 receipts. She had plastic bags of tablet fragments. She had a sealed letter to her attorney. She had a recording. She had a durable power of attorney with my name on it filed in 2019, 7 years before I needed it. She had a shoebox, but all of that evidence was worth exactly nothing until a woman walked into her bedroom, sat down on the edge of her bed, and believed her the first time. That's the truth about elder abuse that the law doesn't quite capture. You can build the most airtight case of your life. You can chart every dose. You can save every receipt. You can write every letter. But if nobody walks through the bedroom door and gets quiet and leans in, you are still alone, at 81 years old, in a house that has been designed by your family to convince you that you are losing your mind. I walked through that door on April 12, 2026. I leaned in. I believed her the first time. And an 81-year-old woman who had been an attorney for 41 years, a widow for 9, a grandmother for 34, and a prisoner in her own body for 7 months, stood up 1 hour later and handed me a folder, a phone number, and a shoebox. What happened after that was just paperwork. They called her senile. I called the police. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.